I've always been fascinated by the Bible, not because I believe in it, but because it serves as a window into the human psyche. One of the themes that stand out most is the use of fire as a symbol of judgment. It's everywhere in biblical stories. Sodom and Gomorrah, the burning bush, the fiery furnace, and even the apocalyptic lake of fire in Revelation. As a logical person, I can't help but see these narratives as products of human imagination, reflecting more about ancient fears and cultural control than any divine truth. Let's look at collective punishment. Where's justice? Take the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. According to Genesis, these cities were so wicked that God decided to wipe them off the map with fire and brimstone. It's a dramatic tale, but I have to ask, is this really justice? I mean, was every single person in those cities evil? Were there no children, no innocent people, no one who might have deserved a second chance? Even animals, incapable of moral reasoning, were destroyed. To me, this smacks of collective punishment, an act that would be condemned if carried out by a human leader today. If God is as omnipotent and wise as believers claim, why couldn't he distinguish between the guilty and the innocent? Why not surgically remove the evil rather than incinerate everything in sight? This isn't justice. It's the kind of indiscriminate wrath you'd expect from humans at their worst, not from an all-loving deity. Fire as a fear tactic. Then there's the emotional impact of these stories. As a child growing up in a religious household, I was told about the fires of hell and the lake of fire in Revelation. I remember being terrified, not inspired, not enlightened, just scared. Looking back, it's clear to me now that these stories were designed to instill fear. After all, fire is one of humanity's oldest and deepest fears. What better way to control a population than by threatening them with eternal flames if they step out of line? From my perspective, these stories aren't about divine justice. They're about social control. Ancient religious leaders needed a way to enforce their moral codes, and fire was the ultimate symbol of punishment. It's primal, visceral, and unforgettable. Another big problem was the lack of proper understanding of natural phenomena. As I grew older and learned more about science, I began to see these stories in a different light. Take the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, for example. Some researchers suggest it might have been inspired by a natural disaster, like a volcanic eruption or a meteor strike. Imagine living thousands of years ago, with no understanding of geology or astronomy, and witnessing a massive fireball or an explosion. It's not hard to see how someone could interpret that as divine wrath. The problem is, we now know better. We understand the natural forces that cause these events, and they have nothing to do with moral failings or divine judgment. To me, these stories are just ancient attempts to explain the unexplainable, a way for early humans to make sense of a chaotic and often terrifying world. One question that keeps nagging at me is, why fire? If God is all-powerful, why choose such a violent and destructive method of judgment? If the goal is justice, wouldn't there be a more compassionate way to deal with sin? Couldn't an omnipotent being simply change hearts and minds, guiding people toward goodness rather than incinerating them? The choice of fire feels so human, so limited. It's the kind of punishment we might use when we're angry and out of control, not the kind of action you'd expect from a supposedly loving and perfect God. To me, it reflects our own projection of human traits onto a deity rather than any divine insight. The inconsistencies are glaring. What's even more troubling is the inconsistency in these stories. In the book of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego survive a fiery furnace without a scratch because God protects them. Yet in Leviticus, Nadab and Abihu are consumed by fire for offering unauthorized incense. So, fire is either an instrument of death or something people can walk through unscathed, depending on the narrative's needs. If fire were truly a divine tool, wouldn't it operate with more consistency? Instead, it feels like a plot device, an easy way to shock and awe the reader. When I read these stories now, as a logical person, I don't see the hand of a just and loving God. I see human creativity at work. I see people grappling with their fears, their need for control, and their desire to explain the unexplainable. Fire, as a symbol of judgment, is powerful because it taps into something primal within us. But that doesn't make it divine. If anything, these stories remind me of how far we've come as a species. We no longer need to attribute natural disasters to angry gods or use fear of eternal flames to enforce morality. We have science to explain the world around us and reason to guide our ethics. The biblical imagery of fire may have served its purpose in the ancient world, but in today's world, it feels more like a relic of a bygone era, a reminder of humanity's early attempts to understand itself. Thank you for watching.